A few months back, we created a Virat Kohli backometer or backometer, however you want to look at it. Basically, because we couldn't do a video where Virat Kohli had played an innings, good, bad, ugly, whatever he managed to do, without a vast majority of the questions being about Virat Kohli. Should he be dropped forever? Is he in form at the moment? Is this the issue? Is this the issue? You know, all these different things. And so to make fun of that, largely borrowed from the DMVR podcast, I was like, let's just do a Virat Kohli backometer every time he plays an innings. And we've been using it quite a bit ever since. Anytime we think he's even, not even when he's the story, but when he's like vaguely interesting enough to be the story. And we've been showing it a lot. And of course, it's there again today. And I was thinking about it, even before he batted today, I was thinking about the backometer because just how many times he was shown on camera. During the first innings, he's not the captain. He wasn't even always on the field, but we knew where he was, what conversations he was having. Here he was with Rohit Sharma. Here he was with whichever bowler. Here he is having a drink off the field. All these different things. We're always seeing Virat Kohli in animated discussion. You know, a wicket happens and he doesn't take the catch and isn't involved in the catch, but we have to see his reaction to it. And I was wondering, like, if anyone had ever just counted how many times you see him on a normal broadcast. And in this game, he's absolutely not the story, right? By the time he came to the crease, the game was kind of over. Yeah, Pakistan had not made enough runs. And if they were going to defend it, it was going to be by taking a bunch of early wickets and putting pressure back on. And so he's absolutely not the story. But in true Virat Kohli style, he still makes 100. He's still there at the end. The cameras are showing him. And so even on a day when Virat Kohli is not the story, Virat Kohli is still the story. Do you want AMAs to connect on live calls with me or engage with our dynamic Discord community? Maybe you want ad-free content, early podcast episodes, or to stay informed through my emailer. Well, if you support us on Patreon, you get all of that plus a little bit of behind the scenes, how the sausage is made stuff. Our deepest thanks go to everyone who has supported us on Patreon so far, but the more people who do means the more content we can make. The actual story today was overs 10 to 20 for Pakistan, where Hardik Pandya and Mohammad Shami, who I think had been off the field for a little while, sort of came together and just put a vice-like grip on that. You look at the numbers, and it's clearly an issue for Pakistan scoring in the first 20 overs or between overs 10 and 25. It doesn't really matter how you split it up. There's a few teams in this Champions Trophy, like New Zealand and South Africa, who like to start slower. But Pakistan start the slowest. And on top of that, you have the issue at the moment that this isn't even their full strength side, right? This is not their top order that they wanted to bring into this tournament. You know, they're sort of piecing things together as they can. Hardik Pandya seems to bowl so much better against Pakistan than he does anywhere else. He's a fifth bowler and sometimes a sixth bowler, you know, against almost every other team. And against Pakistan, they could almost just pencil him in for 10 overs or 4 overs, depending. Like if there was a test match, you'd be like, that would be the test match. He'd make 100 and take a 10-wicket haul, right? That is just how Hardik Pandya plays against Pakistan. And so that squeeze meant that Pakistan was always behind for a long period of time. And then you add in Mohammad Rizwan. He is a brilliant strike rotator, right? He doesn't get many dot balls. He's very good at finding singles, and he's above average on 2s and 3s. Once you get to the boundaries, when it comes to 4s, he's about par. Like, he's not good, but he's not really ahead of it. He basically doesn't hit any 6s, especially in one-day cricket. He doesn't hit any 6s, and he's well behind what you would expect for a normal batter. And so what you end up with is this guy who sort of plays two-paced cricket. I don't know if there's a player around who needs to be encouraged to bat slower than Mohammad Rizwan does. Like, once the opposition just tighten up for a moment, he's like, I got you, I'm going to pull this back. So he's pulling it back from a position of third gear, and then he will not go up to fourth gear again when he's back on top. He'll continue at that sort of similar pace for a long period of time. And then when he decides to go, it's generally slogging. And the reason he kind of slogs when he's going is he's not a natural attacking player, right? And so his idea of going from third gear to fifth or sixth gear is to start taking masses of risk. So what you get on the worst Rizwan days is this. He got a little bit stuck, so he's behind the rate. He stays behind the rate all the way through. And then when he tries to score quickly, he's a little bit too reckless. Like, you compare that to some of the South African players or some of the other players who play in a similar method. They quite often do the same kind of thing, but they do it with a repeatable attacking method. He doesn't really look like he has a repeatable attacking method. So this was the absolute worst case scenario. They got stuck. There was a run out, and then he just completely, he didn't just pull the handbrake on, right? He took the wheels off. He actually maybe took the windscreen out. You know, he changed the windscreen wipers for all I know. Like, he completely stopped that innings. And then he just went back to his normal run accumulation method, but from already such a depressed period of time. And it just meant that they could never catch up. And then when he hits the button to attack, he goes out almost immediately. And all they get is someone who sucked up all this oxygen. And so what Pakistan have is a team where they actually need their top order, especially Rizwan and Babar, to bat as long as possible. But because of that, it also means that if they bat a little bit too slow or they go out the minute they start to hit, it doesn't help Pakistan at all. People will say, oh, they're batting like 1990s cricket. And there's an element of that, of course. But they're doing it without a really strong middle order and certainly without a really strong lower order. Like, the amount of times I watch Pakistan play and I just go, Shaheen Afridi is batting too high no matter what number he's in. And so then that man who I just mentioned, who did one of the greatest reviews in the history of cricket. I love it when a batter reviews a ball because they've missed it by so much they actually don't know what happened. They have no idea what was just delivered to them. So they review it, partly because they're saying, I didn't see it the first time, right? So I have no idea what's happened. Let me have a look at the review and, oh, okay, that was, yeah, okay. I did miss the ball by several feet. And so Pakistan were probably, what, 40 runs short of what they needed to be. Could have even been more against a team like India. But had they got to about 280, and at one stage it looked like they'd get to 255 before they just stopped scoring at all in the death. But if they got to about 280, then they were a very good chance of winning. But 240 to 245 to 250, there was still a chance there. But they needed new ball wickets, and they didn't get them, right? And at that stage, this game was completely over because there was just no way that Abrar Ahmed was going to be able to cause enough chaos in the middle. And they just don't have the backup options who seem to be able to take wickets at all. So unless Abrar Ahmed took 3 and Haris Rauf took 3 all in the middle, there was no way they were able to put pressure on India. And let's be honest, India essentially sleptwalked through this chase. Maybe sleptwalk isn't the best way of putting it. I was thinking it's more like when you have a video game and you know that your side is just so much better than the other side. And so you just keep pressing simulate innings. Because what's the point in actually going through the process? Well, we've got a better side, which is let's just keep spamming the button until we get to a point where we're in a real contest against another side. And so by the time Virat Kohli comes in, they've already knocked the head off this chase, right? Any damage that Pakistan had to do was probably in the first 2 to 3 overs. And the fact that they didn't get anywhere then, Kohli comes in at the end of the 5th over. And on top of that, at the other end is Shubman Gill, who I think is going to continue to go on and make runs in 50 overs cricket, even after it is completely banned and no one plays it anymore. And so Virat Kohli's 100 is almost a supplementary one, right? By the end of the game, it doesn't feel like that, of course, but you look at the scorecard and the match situation and everything else, and the game was more than well set up by Rohit scoring quite quickly at the top and Shubman Gill making sure that the second wicket didn't fall until the game was completely over. But if there's anything that Virat Kohli actually did in this game other than score like another 100, which he's done quite a bit in chases against everyone and also Pakistan, it's that for the Indian fans of this game, at least they had a reason to watch. Because let's be honest, when Rizwan was knocking the ball around early on, you could hear the sound of a billion yawns. And by the end, there was something happening. There was a reason to watch. And that's why we have the backometer. And that's why the directors and the cameras are always on Virat Kohli. He is box office at almost all times. Look, I have covered a lot of India-Pakistan games in my life. I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 from inside stadiums, maybe even more than that, right? And then another 10 or 15, via streams or whatever else, right? Like, I've covered a lot of these games, and a lot of them have been incredibly dull. But the one thing that would say is, if Virat Kohli is there, even the dullness is thinned out a little bit. And in this particular case, this was like the worst movie you would ever want to watch. And then you're like, oh, that was an enjoyable ending. So one way or another, these things are almost always about Virat Kohli. It took God and the demon to build international cricket, but don't tell Johnny Best that. 1882, Australia had played 1 test in England against the god W.G. Grace, and they sucked. So they were playing him again, and it was a tough wicket. But England was in front, so Australia was desperate for a 3rd innings lead. At number 8 was young all-rounder Sammy Jones. After a routine single, he walks down to do some gardening on the pitch. Grace whips off the bails and appeals. The ball wasn't dead, Jones was run out. The Australians were furious. In fact, some of the English players were also furious. But what Grace said went, and the umpires had already given it. Next in was Fred Spofford. He was known as the demon fast bowler. He was furious, and he let England know exactly what was coming next, which was maiden. There's 12 maidens. I can't count them all. England only needed 85 to win. W.G. Grace made 32. England only 77. That was the test where the Ashes began. Buy my book Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.